a rant. I am going to be skating off real soon with my brother to go to church, but I figured let's connect real quick with the community with a question in mind, a conversation with thought, just something to kick around. You know, I like to go on live sometimes and just challenge myself with no real agenda, just a rant, but also it's a way to connect with you guys on a weekly basis aside from the stuff that I'm releasing. You guys know that I just released the Montrose strap, the leather strap is also going to be a giveaway. So if you guys haven't checked that video out, check the last video that I released, because Ted from Montrose Strap is going to be picking a comment from that video and going to be doing a giveaway for his straps. So if you haven't seen that yet, check it out. But I wanted to come up in here and talk about independent brands and how you guys feel they should be releasing their watches. What are your expectations for an independent brand just starting off? So, what's going on? Good morning, what is it? Tanran San. What's going on, brother? Good morning. Wristwatch check. I have my Spinnaker, the Flus. The Flus is loose. I'm going to also do an in-depth review of this watch because it is my first Spinnaker, which I really am excited about because I like the Blancpain type of look. I've always liked Blancpain because their bezel, or their bezel insert rather, kind of has that curved kind of look to it, if you guys know what I mean. I actually did one. I did my own build from AliExpress, and I'm excited about that because before I won this watch at a watch meetup, I did my own iteration because we all know that Swatch came out with their version of the Blancpain. So I said, you know what, man? If Swatch could do it, let me try and build one. And I actually built one from AliExpress. And you guys know which watch I'm talking about. If you have a Watch Crunch account, you can always go on there and check out my wristwatch shots so you guys can see what it looks like. But what I want to do is I want to compare this Spinnaker. Well, first I want to do a review of this Spinnaker, and then I'm going to do a comparison because you guys like comparison videos for sure. When I did that Namoki comparison to the actual Seiko Alpinist, that one was value for you guys, and I realized that, you know, seeing comparisons are interesting, right? And you guys are interested in my opinions on it, so I thought it would be fun to do a comparison video to this Spinnaker to the AliExpress build that I did in the future. So that's coming up for sure. If you guys haven't checked out my last video, I implore you to do so because it was on the Montrose strap, and Ted, the owner, Ted Garber, is going to choose one of the comments to give you guys one of the straps. And his straps are phenomenal. And I hope that he also gives you guys an option between the FKM and the leather strap. Both are really fantastic. I was impressed with the leather release with it because it followed suit. But let's stay on topic, and the topic for today is micro brands and how are they entering into the market. What are your expectations when you see a micro brand enter into the space? Because one thing that I know is that is a topic of discussion because there are a lot of micro brands surfacing over the last 5 years especially. Matter of fact, over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a lot of surge to micro brands coming out. And you guys already know that I'm all for it because the more the merrier, right? The more options that we have is a thing. And I know a lot of people said that it's overwhelming, but the thing is this, right? Like my always answer to that is just because somebody comes out doesn't mean they're gonna last, right? So let the independent brand do their thing, let them develop, let them try and give us new options and everything else. And you know, in 5 years' time, maybe sooner than that, you know, if it's not for the market, it's not for the market. So it's going to weed itself out. I think we're just seeing a large surge of independent brands, but eventually, if they don't adapt to what we want, if they're not creating value, then it is what it is. But I'm always excited to see a lot of independent brands come out. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a few brand new releases, right? I was the first creator on a couple of watches to do reviews for independent brands. So, you know, and I watch a lot of the Kickstarters. I watch a lot of the new stuff because that's what intrigues me. I want to see how they are entering in. I like to do my research based off of that. And I really feel like I have my own opinion on it, but I'm curious to see what are your guys' expectations when an independent brand comes out? And I'm going to talk about a couple of them, but let me catch up to chat. Miles says, hi, what's up, brother? Denton, good morning. Sean, what's going on? Hey, it's Chris Brown. I guess that's a compliment. I'll take it. But yeah, so I've been a part of more so the very, very independent brands coming out, right? Just a passionate person who's made their build. And what I've seen for the most part is mostly those releases are very heavily inspired, right? They are very homage style watches, which is I'm okay with, right? So I'm going to give you guys my opinion. Jump in whenever you feel inspired to on the topic. But Amy, good morning. I think that if you're going to come into the market more so as a homage watch, that's totally fine. But the caveat to that is you need to try and separate yourself with that release as much as possible, right? Because we've already seen a lot of Chinese brands produce watches that are homage. The homage watches are pretty much covered and glazed over. So if you're brand new, let's say you're starting a micro brand today and you want to enter the market and you're very similar to a watch that everybody knows, it has to have its own spin. It has to separate itself enough to say, okay, this is a little bit of a taste of something different. An example of that would be the new review that you guys saw me do for Noctua Watch Corp, right? Like he has an SKX design, he has a Sin-inspired design fused, but there was enough in there, in my opinion, to separate himself and give us something new. It was a nice kind of connection that he made. Now, there are watches out there that have it. There are few. But I think the way that he went about it and the tactical side, making it with that bead blast all finish, making an all loom dial, adding that Kenji chapter ring, it was enough in there to pique somebody's interest that already has design language that is going to follow suit with that, right? And then you have something like this. Let me take this off of the wrist. Let me give you guys a shot of what I'm exactly wearing, and that is the Spinnaker Flus. The Flus is loose. I got lucky. I actually won this in a watch meetup. It was a Watch Crunch meetup in New York after the wind-up fair. I was very fortunate. I didn't even set the time, so, please forgive. But I love this language design. I love the Blancpain. The original Blancpain watches are a little bit too expensive, so I'm more than happy to accept a homage watch to it. But now, this is also now, Spinnaker's been out, right? This is not their first release. However, going into this design is an example of what I'm talking about, right? It is smaller in size. I think this is a 40 mil, but it also has a Miyota movement. So we are a little bit different when it comes to that. And then it has colorways that are more so not vintage, right? Like you're getting a lot more color in this. They have other iterations of this that are gonna give you a lot more, but I think it separates itself enough to intrigue somebody. I think the dimensions that they did were fantastic. I think they knocked this one out of the park. And I'm excited to do a review deep dive of this, but more so, I'm excited to do a comparison to an AliExpress build that I was able to achieve, which I did that first. And the one that I did from AliExpress is a little bit of a chunky boy. It's bigger than this watch for sure. So there are gonna be significant differences, but what you guys are gonna be able to see is what a modder like myself was able to achieve versus an independent brand doing their own iteration, which I absolutely am in love with this watch. I want to do a deep dive and see how the loom goes, and I have tested the bezel and everything else. So I'm going to give you guys all of the good stuff when it comes to the finer details in this watch. And I was excited to learn more about Spinnaker, seeing their range in watches. Like I love to have more information to give people a direction on where to start with independent brands if you're looking for more of a budget, but you're also looking for more of a quality control. You're looking for somebody to put their own spin on it, if you will. The Islander is another good example of it. Spinnaker is great. You got Out of Order. There's a lot of micro brands and a lot of different ways and directions that we can go getting into the independent brand space. And that's exciting to have that many options. I only pose that question to you guys, like what do you want to see out of an independent brand coming out? And for me, it's just that. It's very simple. I understand. Now, here's the deal. Let me give you a little more information as well. I've also done interviews. There is a live that you guys can see as well where I did an interview with the brand owner of Mark Time. And he didn't go that route, right? He went the route of designing his own watch, getting his own inspiration. Of course, look, you're not going to reinvent the wheel. It's very, very difficult. And we're going to talk about Zhenheng, right? Zhenheng is a spinoff off of San Martin. That's their independent brand version. We're going to also incorporate them because they're a perfect example of going completely unique design, right? But let's start off with Mark Time. Mark Time started his watches off, and I own the M1.2. He was gracious enough to gift that with me after we worked together for a while. That wasn't the initial plan. The initial plan was for me to borrow his watches. I borrowed the M1.2. I borrowed a couple of his watches. You guys can see the reviews and the interview, and I was excited about it. I think he did a phenomenal job starting off. It's very difficult, but what I learned in the conversations with him is that it's not cheap to start off in a unique design. And if you guys watch videos on how people send drawings and go through prototypes and everything else, that is a very difficult thing to do. You know, finding a manufacturer, finding somebody to build a watch to your specifications, more than likely, obviously, it's going to be overseas. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of money involved, right? So when you guys are saying, hey, I am tired of these independent brands coming out and they all look the same and this, I just want to give you a little added perspective that it's not a cheap thing going in and finding your own design off rip. And I know some of you may say, well, then don't do it. You know what I mean? I have to respectfully disagree, only because that person has a lot of passion still. And I don't think that not having enough money, and if you want me to put a figure to it, it was $100,000 for Mark Time to really kick off his watches and do his design and find all these things that we're talking about. Not everybody has all those, you know, funds in the beginning to start off. And I would hate to be shorted as an enthusiast to see something or see a capability of somebody and watch that brand grow just because they don't have the funds up front. That being said, if you go the route of doing a kind of a homage style watch, then yes, I still think that very quickly you need to try to separate yourself. Because one of the most prestigious things that you can do as an independent brand is separate yourself, where somebody sees your watch and they go, oh, I know what company that is, before seeing the logo, right? Ming does a fantastic job of that. Venezianico does a fantastic job. Chris Ward, you know, Formex, we all know the names. But at the end of the day, even when they're not as big, there's a lot of micro brands that has successfully separated themselves. Jack Mason's another one. Notice is another one. Where when you see that watch, you're like, okay, I know which independent brand that is. And for me, I think that that is the greatest achievement that you can get as an independent brand, to separate yourself, right? Independent, make yourself look independent, make your watches look very recognizable, and give the watch market something new, something fresh, something daring, something that the bigger brands are not capable, and or let's be honest, they don't want to. They're comfortable with whatever they're doing most of the time, and for whatever reason, they don't want to listen to the watch community, which is very, very strong in their opinions. I'm sure that you guys have even gone to higher brands and give your 2 cents of maybe shrinking a watches, changing a design. But I feel like the response level, and I'm not saying this for all of them, I'm just saying this for the majority, but that left food on the table for independent brands now to have the opportunity to listen to those demands and fill in those gaps. And there's a lot of companies that are on Kickstarter right now. I can't remember the company's name right now. I was just talking to him. I gave him my 2 cents, and he was about to release his watches. He's on WatchCrunch, by the way. And if you don't know what WatchCrunch is, just after this in your smartphone, they're in the App Store for either Apple or Android. Just type in WatchCrunch, one word, and thank me later. But he was on WatchCrunch. He set a post out, and he was looking for feedback. I gave him a laundry list of things that I felt as my opinion. And I didn't just try to give him opinions that would work for me. I was giving him opinions like, hey, enthusiasts at this level, at this state in the game, if you want to cover a large span, right? If somebody's starting their collection, then they're probably going to have less requirements, right? If it just looks cool, they'll probably gravitate towards it. At least that's how it was for me. But if you want to cover a larger span and you want to increase your movement and you want to give more to the clasp and you want to do quick release and you want to give a different design language on the hands, you know, there's little things that you can implement on something that you are already creating to make it more interesting for people to gravitate to and cover more enthusiasts. Going back to Zhenghong, they are a perfect example because I hear a lot of people say, man, I'm looking for a unique design when an independent brand comes out. Well, Janghun gives nothing but unique designs. But when you enter in that space, especially for watch collectors, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a home run. It is hard to reinvent the wheel, even if you change the case designs altogether. Their first wardrobe was an onion-shaped case, and there's a lot of people who purchased the watch, but there's a lot of people that was a little too strong for them. And they're continuing to do all unique designs. The next one was a diver now. It is a little bit of a different spin. It does have heavy inspiration on the bezel, but I think they're doing their best to give unique designs. I think from San Martin, they've heard a lot of requests to not have homages on, knowing you guys know that San Martin started off doing a lot of homage style watches, but now what we're seeing with San Martin, and they're doing a fantastic job. If you're watching a lot of their Gata releases and a lot of their dials, they're starting to also do a lot of unique designs, if you will, right? It's not too crazy, but I don't know. Like, I saw a lot of the reactions to Janghun and their releases, and it's kind of like, okay, we ask for uniqueness, and then when we get it, we're like, that's too unique, which is fine. We're all entitled to our opinions, and just because you do something, whether it be a unique design or it be more of a homage style, you're swinging the bat. You're at the batting cages. It's not guaranteed that you're going to release something that's going to be a home run for everybody. So it is what it is. But we're looking at all of those brands, Noctua, Janghun, all of those independent brands, Mark Time. I brought them up because they offer a very different approach to how to enter the market. And obviously, Janghun has the funds to go completely on their own, give us complete unique designs because of San Martin, right? They have enough money to enter into that. Now, if you're a regular enthusiast and you want to enter into the watch market, it's different. You have to make connections, you have to have relationships. But to go to a manufacturer and say, hey, I need a case design that's never been done before, that's going to cost you a pretty penny. And you're going to have to go back and forth. There's going to have to be a lot of designs that are, signed off on. They have, it's got to be perfect, right? It's got to fit the movement. It's got the hands and everything else. So that's a lot. It's a lot. Excuse me. Let me catch up on chat. Shout me out. Denton, you get the shout out, bro. You get the shout out. How you doing? Let me catch up. Miles, hi. Sorry, guys. I sometimes take... Amy, hey, what's going on? How do you really feel about JP new watch? You're talking about Noctua watches, Black Samurai? I think I pretty much gave my opinion on the review, to be honest with you. It's such a difficult thing, okay? So I go on here and I tell you guys black and white that I'm going to be open and honest in my reviews, which I always am. And I'm a human being at the end of the day, right? So I'm not gonna lie to you and sit there that there aren't fuzzy feelings because this guy is my friend, right? There is, but when I do a review, when I do a video, that has to be church and state, right? Our friendship and my review, it is what it is, right? And if we're not gonna be friends anymore because I said that there's an improvement that I really feel that there should be, then we weren't really friends to begin with, right? Our morals are not aligned, and if you wanted me to put your watch on my channel and, be honest about it, then that's what it is. So I'll be honest with you, with that review, I was impressed with the watch release. I really felt like it did separate itself enough. Of course, there was homage design language, which I'm no stranger to, right? I just showed you the Spinnaker, which this is a homage to the Blancpain, 50 Fathoms. Nothing wrong with homage watches. Now, that's more of a homage to watches that are a little bit more obtainable. However, it still is giving us something that is enough difference from the two brands that it collaborates with or draws inspiration from to call it its own, right? And I was excited about that. I really think that the quality for sure was one of the most impressive things, right? Just knowing that he didn't have $100,000 to put into a watch to release it, yet he released something very substantial. And I think that JP has his finger on the pulse. I think that he understands the watch market enough. And I told you guys what the improvements were, and I said, listen, honest opinion, nothing wrong with the NH35. Absolutely, it's a solid movement. There's a lot of companies that are well established that are still using different iterations of the NH movement, so it's gonna last in your watch. So you're not getting cheated out of an NH35. However, even in my own experience, there's there's a specification fatigue, if you will, with the NH35, right? Like I have a lot of NH35s already, so I'm ready for experiencing a Swiss made, an SW, a Miyota, a higher beat. So that was probably one of my biggest takeaways from his release, where I think that he should rapidly try to separate himself with the movement itself. Other than that, blanket comment on it, I think it was a home run. I think it's a very, very good watch, and I think it's worth picking up if it intrigues you for the dimensions, if it fits for your wrist. But like always, responsibly. And listen, I understand my responsibility here. I see how when I do post something, people are paying attention to it. So I do want to always be careful as well. I feel like I have a responsibility. If I post something and somebody gets excited and they just pull the trigger because I post it, then that's my responsibility to you, right? With that said, that's why I always say, do your own homework, right? I'm here to present the watch. I may give you my opinion on it because you care about my opinion, but please do not let that be end all be all for your decision to purchase the watch. Do your own homework. Put my reviews up against other people that have done the review on it. If there aren't any other reviews, like in this case for Noctua, I was the first person to do the review. There are other reviewers doing it, so if you want to hold off, respect. But also go on the website, check every little detail that you have to check on your checklist if you weren't watching my review ahead of time. And make the decision for yourself, man. I don't want to be responsible for something that you're not completely happy with. It's not about selling watches when I do reviews for them. I'm presenting them. I'm doing it professionally as much as I can. This is a great hobby for me. But at the end of the day, guys, I want you guys to make your own decision on it. But yes, in my opinion, I love the watch, and I think it's worthy of its weight in gold, if you will. Anyway, nothing on chat, so let me just keep rambling on. I'm going to cut out here really soon, guys. I'm actually going to church with my brother, so I just wanted to come up here and see what your guys' thoughts were. I know a lot of you watch the playback. I appreciate you guys who are in the chat to just listen to me rant. But that's my whole thing, man. That's how I really feel about independent brands. I'm okay with whatever angle you want to come in with. There's plus and minuses to both ends. I don't care how much money you have to back a new watch, right? Just because you want to say, oh, I'm going to come in with a unique design, people are going to love it. That's not necessarily the case. I would still utilize the following that you have. And maybe I'm speaking more so towards Jang Hong because they're like the biggest. And if you don't know what company I'm talking about, look it up. Jang Hong. I can't spell it. But they're the spinoff of San Martin. And they're doing completely unique designs. And I know a lot of people have purchased their watches, but the reviews also have had some criticism about how out there they are. But for me, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you really want to see something new and then you see something new and you just reject it off the bat, give it a chance. Give them their feedback. Jang Hong should also be utilizing their connections to reviewers and or to the community directly. I know they're on Watch Crunch as well. Just put it out there. Say, hey, before you run production and before you maybe have 3 SKUs that are up there that are unique. I know that's a lot of work, but it's worth it because now you're going to have a voting system. And Watch Crunch, you could even post a voting poll, right? You could say, which case do you guys like the best for the new watch that we're coming out with? Get that feedback, like definitely message directly creators, say, hey, can you take a look at this and just tell us what you think? Forget about, review watches and gifts and doing reviews. Like, just send a message directly and say, hey, what do you think? You've done plenty of reviews. You have your finger on the pulse for collectors. Plus, the community is there to give you their direct response. But put the message out there. See 3 or 4 iterations and see what people are just grabbing to naturally. I think that solves a lot for a unique design. And then on the other spectrum, if you only have $10,000, let's say, to do a release and you have to go with OEM and you want to go with good quality and you want to do small batches, no problem. Just make sure that, now see on that one, you have to, I would still do feedback, but the feedback is limited, right? Because if you're doing OEM, even with Seiko, you have tons of parts that you can play with, right? But you still want to get the feedback, but probably you're going to digest that a little differently because of your limitations. You can't just go put pen to paper, design whatever you want, right? To be fair. That said, you have a lot of homework to do. see what else is out there, see what other people are doing, and separate yourself with the matchups that you want to put together with them as best as possible to separate yourself. Because it's okay if you don't have a crazy bankroll to start off with, but at the same time, listen, there's a lot of modders out there. There's a lot of people putting together SKX OEMs already. So it's a tough bid to have. And there's always people that are not going to want to mess with it themselves. There's always people that are like, I'm not building nothing. Like, I'm not even going to attempt it. It's not for me. So they may be happy that you're offering a piece closer to what their design is. So the feedback is still important in that aspect, but even more so, putting your own spin wherever you can, even if it's super minor. Even if you're doing an SKX case that Seiko doesn't offer with drilled lugs and you do drilled lugs, you know, it doesn't matter how small that difference is, but it does matter how much homework you do and how much you try to separate yourself from the beginning and then moving forward, right? The few companies that I got to talking with where they did their release and they were doing a more of a homage and OEM, I said, listen, number one, that's most important, separation, but also have the next model, have the next 3 models. You should have already in mind 4 models in mind, because I know you're hyper focused on, yeah, Skylar, but I got to sell some watches before I could get to that point. Yes, but your ideas should be flowing ahead of time, because the worst case scenario that you have, there's 2 worst case scenarios I'll give you guys with working with brand new brands that I've come up against, or at least that I've been privy to. Number one is you do a release and then you wait so long for the next one and you kind of lose that traction. Because what we're seeing a lot with even more established independent brands is that and the more established they are, you guys see it with Vinicianago, you guys see it with Chris Ward. Their SKUs, they're like pow, 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 pow. They're releasing like 10 models a year, right? So you have to have the next one in mind, right? And then the second caveat is it's okay to have small batches and then release those and then put sold out and then put a new batch in the system for people to purchase. What you can't do is play it too safe. You can't play it too close to the hip. And what do I mean by that? You can't do a release and make watch collectors wait 6 months for your watch to come in. Like that's out. If you're brand new, you got to have that batch ready. You can't have them wait a couple of weeks. It has to be like, okay, you know, this is when it's coming out and you have to stay true to that timeline. And if they're going to wait, they're going to wait. But my thing is always have X amount of models ready in the box to be shipped, because people are not going to wait if you're brand new and stuff like that. They have the next watch that they want and everything else. So that's my opinion, at least on it. I thought the Wardrum, I can't spell the manufacturer either, was a real departure. You felt like the Wardrum was a real departure, like as in like really a big difference in what we've seen before. That onion-shaped case was out of control. Yeah, I can't spell the I can't spell the company. I think it's pronounced Zheng Hung. But yeah, man, they really, I was actually really happy to see something so different. Now, what didn't work for me with there, if I'm being honest, was the lug to lug was a little, and like to have lugs hang over your wrist, for me is a no-fly zone. That's the only thing. I don't mind a big, robust watch. I don't even mind it sitting on top of my wrist at a certain degree, but when the lugs hang off, I'm like, and my wrist probably just barely made it for that watch, but I know that I have a 7.25-inch wrist. There's people with wrist sizes that are smaller. So yeah, I still loved it though. I love the fact that they were swinging for the fences for a new design, because it's hard up to see something different. And that I know is something that we're thirsty for, because it's so difficult even for the big brands to show us something that we haven't had before. So that was my take on it. And that's it, guys. That's all I have for today. It's going to be a short one. I apologize, but I got to skate off. And I appreciate you guys listening to the rant. I'm curious to see what you guys say in the comments for what your take is and what you feel an independent brand entering into the game. What are your expectations for it? And that goes for specifications too. Like if we talk about the release that Jody did, right? Just one more watch, the Ascendance. He had a Miyota movement in there. He had quick releases. He had a bunch of things that were expected to have. And obviously he has his finger on the pulse, being a watch reviewer himself. He knows how to enter into the game and do it well and know what to expect. But those are the little things and those little details that I think are necessary, especially when, you know, the companies that do affordable watches can just crank those puppies out. And if you can't at least beat them to their specifications, which is getting harder and harder. So if you're thinking about starting a watch company, I wouldn't wait, right? As much as people are saying, oh man, there's too many, I wouldn't wait, because the manufacturing process, the level of entry is getting tighter and tighter. It's getting better and better. We see the finishing from San Martin. We see the finishing from Boltony. We see the finishing from all of these Chinese brands that you could purchase on AliExpress, and they're getting very good. So if you wait, it's harder for you to separate yourself from somebody like that. And I know you can't beat the price of that. Hello, they're purchasing thousands of units per run. So if you're dancing with the idea and you happen to come across this rant and you stayed to the end, do it sooner than later. If you want to collab with me and if you want to just pick my mind, right? If you don't necessarily want to utilize my channel for a review, message me on WatchCrunch, show me what you got, let me take a look at it. I'll post something up on there to get more minds involved. And let's see if we can make a better watch for all of us to experience at the end of the day, because that's what it should be about. We should be listening to the community about what they want and what they expect, and that's what I'm interested to hear from you guys today. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys for stopping into this little rant on a Sunday. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I appreciate you guys spending your most valuable asset, which is time. I'll see you guys hopefully in the next one.